Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday to you. So this morning, we're going to run through a few things. A few of the COVID-19 notes that we're going to discuss, I thought it would be appropriate to, we touched on a few of these last week, but with everything changing, perhaps a lot of people weren't on the call last week. I figured it would be appropriate just to walk back through a few of those notes. With everyone working at home or the majority of state folks working at home, it's going to change some of the way that we do some processes, but the good news is, for procurements and SPOs working remotely, we have bid buy, so we can still do all of our appropriate approvals, as well as email, cell phones, all sorts of things. So the big message to take away from today is, we are operating a little differently than we are used to, but procurements should be able to move forward as intended. The bid buy team has an issue that was identified. We're going to talk about that. If you return a bid, so if a bid is disapproved, it can't be processed that same day. So the fix is coming today, and we'll discuss that. New job aid alert. We have 2 new job aids that were out there added late last week. No cost farm leases and concessions, as well as the legacy contract upload has been updated as well. And then we're going to talk about a new Bid Buy Training Tuesday series that we're going to add. Since we can't offer all the in-person bid buy classes that we are usually offering, we're going to start a new series that's just going to, we're going to tack on the end of our Tuesdays, and we'll talk about that. And then, of course, we have our fun fact of the day. So concerning the COVID-19, a few notes regarding the COVID-19 and how it affects all our agency procurements. So the Executive Ethics Commission and the CPO's office has an emergency preparedness plan in place. So all SPOs have been directed to work from home, but this shouldn't disrupt any of our procurement process because thankfully we have bid buys, so all of those procurement approvals can be applied remotely. SPOs can provide all the approvals per usual. Of course, we have emails, cell phones, information, all that contact information you should probably already have, but if you don't, reach out to your APO and you'll get that information for your SPO. And of course, we're all going to get really good at WebEx. That's the silver lining here. We're going to be able to utilize our technology. I'm learning a lot about Microsoft Teams. I think that's a really great tool to be using. So we're going to learn how to use some technology. So a couple notes regarding bid openings. So really, it's going to be a case-by-case basis. I mean, the questions, I'm not going to be able to answer any specific questions on the call today, but we just want the messaging to go out to all you folks that flexibility is going to be key. So if it's something that your agency perhaps could wait, you might need to push out a bid opening. Some of those questions are really going to need to be answered by your APO and your SPO. I won't be able to answer them, but a couple things to think about, right? So is someone going to be there to accept paper submissions? This is a very fluid situation, and we're hoping to provide some extra guidance perhaps as soon as later this week. But really, what we need to understand is, we are in some extraordinary times right now, and just because we are working remotely, the procurement code is still in place, right? Our administrative rules are still in place. So we have these rules and the procurement code that speaks to public bid openings. We're going to hopefully be able to provide some guidance specifically on what that entails. But at this point, you need to contact your SPO and your APO because it really will be a case-by-case basis. So in terms of our scheduled hearings, so the Chief Procurement Office continues to hold sole source and emergency extension hearings. The only difference is it's going to be all done via a WebEx, okay? So if this applies to any currently scheduled hearings, information will be sent out with revised contact information. So you still will have the sole source hearings, all the emergency extension hearings. It's just they're going to be done via WebEx. Like I said before, we're all going to get really good at WebEx. Pre-submission conferences. These can be handled virtually only if they are not mandatory. So any of your non-mandatory pre-submission conferences can still occur, but mostly they'll have to be done via WebEx. Now this is going to vary from agency to from agency to agency and case by case basis. Once again, if you have specific questions regarding one of your procurements that would have a pre-submission conference, contact your APO or your SPO. Depending on what the case by case what it is, potentially you could be looking at moving the bid opening out and then being able, delaying it, as well as delaying that pre-submission conference, or perhaps that could happen. It could occur as scheduled. So just remember, the procurement code and all our administrative rules still do apply. So I just want to make sure that that is very clear. We're not going to be, the procurement code is not suspended for any reason, nothing like that. Okay, so the issue that we identified concerning the bid by timestamp. So what's happening is a bid is getting disapproved, and then bid by is timestamping it at 12 a.m., midnight. So even if I sent something I disapproved as an SPO right now at 9:10, what happens is it timestamps it at midnight. So it's not allowing, so it goes back to the agency fixes whatever needs to be fixed. It's not allowing you to resubmit for approval on that same day. So this is only for bids. Recs are not being affected. Purchase orders are not being affected. Those are operating as usual, but it's just on those bids. And so, at this point, there's no need to contact state user if you run into that today. The issue's been identified, and the bid buy team's been working hard with Periscope on a fix today, and they're going to be doing some testing to make sure that it's fixed. But the system is most likely going to have downtime tonight. That exact time is going to be communicated in your news section on your home screen. So just stay tuned to that. That'll be coming through later this afternoon on a specific time because, with everybody working remotely, you may have the option to be working later into the night, versus working in the office. So just to let you know, there will be most likely the production environment will be down, but that'll be later on tonight. And stay tuned to that news item because as soon as they have an exact time, they're going to let you know via that news item. Okay, let's see. We have a question. Can mandatory pre-submission conferences occur if they are conducted via WebEx? So that's going to be a question. I think you're going to have to reach out to your SPO and we're going to get specific guidance on that. Last I had heard was that the optional pre-submission conferences were going to be occurring via WebEx, but we're going to have to reach back out, and that's a great question. That's one of those that we'll need to circle back on. Okay, so for that bid by timestamp issue, just stay tuned to that news item on your home screen, and that will let you know exactly what time that the bid by production environment will be down tonight so that they can upload that fix in there. So hopefully by tomorrow, this will be completely fixed. So new job aid alert. We have 2 new job aids that are up there posted to the job aid training resources page, the no cost farm leases and concession job aid, as well as the contract upload. If you need to upload any sort of any legacy contracts that if they weren't already uploaded into bid buy, you may still have some of those contracts that are out there in order to do a renewal, for instance, but you don't have the actual legacy contract in there. Chances are most of them are already uploaded. That was a part of in guidance that we provided, maybe a couple years ago. But if there aren't any, or if there are ones that weren't, follow that job aid. So we're going to have a new bid buy training series. Okay, so normally I'm out doing in-person bid buy trainings or in-person procurement trainings to agencies as requested. Now that Derek and I will be working remotely, we're still going to be offering it. It's just going to be via WebEx. Okay, so in the immediate future, specifically for this Tuesday call, rather than do a completely different day and time to do specific bid buy training, and also instead of mute somebody. Sorry, let me mute again.
What happened? Did you do something? No, somebody's not muted. Somebody's not muted.
For some reason, I'm not able to mute somebody. Would you guys just make sure that you're all on mute? Thanks. Okay, so immediately following our normal Training Tuesday content, so we'll go through, normally these are only, 15 minutes or so. But immediately following all that normal content, I'll stick around, and each week we're going to address a different procurement method, and we'll get into bid buy train and walk through it the same way that we would in some of our other trainings. Okay, so this week we're going to do a small purchase under $10,000, including a small business set aside waiver. So you go out to small businesses, maybe you don't receive any quotes back, or if they are unreasonably high, you get a small business set aside waiver, and then you go out to all businesses. So we still are going to, touch on all of our usual Training Tuesdays, keep you in touch with, as things are changing week to week. But immediately following that, rather than having a completely separate, different bid buy training, we're just going to continue and move on here. So I understand if, those of you that are here just for that first, 15 minutes of content, please do. And if you need to get off the call, that's absolutely totally fine. You're not hurting my feelings or anything, but sometimes it's also good to walk through some of our bid buy specific processes. So, and also since we have this bid buy, or we have the Training Tuesday already publicly posted, and we do have quite a few folks that get on each week, I figured it would probably be easier just to kind of tack on the very end of this. Okay. All right. So, our fun fact on this day, one of the greatest shows ever written, 2005, The Office premiered on NBC on this day, March 24th, 2005. Now, since we're all at home and we can't, or are not supposed to go out very often, if you've never seen The Office, I highly suggest jumping in and binge watching some of that later on tonight. Also, if you've never seen the British version, so The Office, the American version, obviously was a takeoff from the British version. Make sure you go check that out as well. Okay, so do we have any other questions regarding any of the content before I get into some of the bid buy? Here's my contact information as well. Okay, so not seeing any questions, I'll go ahead and get into the bid buy portion of this week. And oh, Randy, thank you very much. I got a reminder. Remind people that you're not the contact for issues, state user is. So that's a great, I should have a slide that has the state user as well. If you have issues with, I just want to provide my contact information because if something comes up specific to what we talked about, I can answer the question. But I want to let you guys know if you run into those issues, something that's, you get an error that is not something you haven't seen before, state user is really the contact for you. So just as a reminder, we always contact our APO, SPO first because perhaps they can answer that question specifically. If not, then send an email to stateuser.bidbuy@illinois.gov, but CC your SPO and your APO because a lot of times we want that information to filter back out from the state user to all those parties that are involved. So that way, the next time another person has that same question, it could get addressed immediately rather than having to wait for a state user to get through. Because state user gets quite a bit of emails every single day and calls. Okay, so I'm gonna go get out of here. I'm gonna go into my train environment here, and we're just gonna walk through a small purchase, less than $10,000. Sure here. Be sharing a browser. There we go. Okay, let me pull up my chat function just in case anybody has any questions. Okay, so this is our home screen, and we are going to be doing a small purchase less than $10,000. Okay, so these are set aside for our small business vendors. So we're going to be going out to our small businesses first. And just as a reminder, we have our job aid. So you can just walk right down the steps. That makes it nice and easy. We're going to be creating a requisition that's going to go out to our small businesses first, and then we're going to go directly to our purchase order. Okay, so with it being less than $10,000, we actually don't need the approval of the SPO. So that's why we go requisition to purchase order. Now, there is going to be a document that's going to need to be attached to our procurement here. So it'll have to be in the procurement file, which is the small business, the small purchase designation memo. And so just to give you a little bit of history behind what that small purchase designation memo is the CPO has deemed it more efficient and proper to all those small purchases that are less than $10,000 do not require SPO approval. Okay, so the procurement code speaks to a written determination made by the SPO for all awards. So that's starting at $1. So for if the small purchase designation memo wasn't in place, you would have to have the SPO approval for every single small purchase, starting at $1. However, the small purchase designation memo says that your agency agrees to follow the small purchase process laid out in CPO memo. I think it's 2018. So it kind of walks through that. It's signed by the director. It's signed by the SPO. And as long as that document is in your procurement file, that is in lieu of that written determination that's in the procurement code. Okay? So it just needs to be attached in that procurement file. So following our job aid, right? We're going to create a requisition. Now I have all this information that I need to complete. Some's going to be pre-filled for me, your department and location, and some of the information I'm going to have to complete. So each one of, just in general, our workflow is going to be, we have these tabs, general, it starts in the general tab. I have to complete items as we move all the way through the tabs, and then in the summary tab, we will be submitting for approval once we actually receive our quotes. So short description, let's see, what are we going to buy today? Let's buy guitar amps. Our department and location is going to be pre-completed. Our requisition type, now we have the two options. While there are four here, we're only going to use two. We have open market and release. Open market requisitions are those that we are going to go out to the open market and we are going to receive quotes. Release is what we'd use for a release off of a master. And that's probably, that's a procurement method maybe we'll touch on next week. So open market, and then it opens up type code. We just select the appropriate type code here. Say equipment. You can see further on here that I am defaulted as the purchaser. You can change that if you need to. I know that some agencies, it is the agency's policy to go in and actually change the purchaser. It will always default to whoever's initially inputting the information, but you could change that if you need to. And that's a good time to actually discuss about, in general, we do have CPOGS policy and guidance on certain things, but if your agency has a specific way of doing something, as long as it doesn't contradict what the CPOGS guidance is, you can do that. So, for instance, in our job aids, we're not going to say, change the purchaser to whatever. Some of the agencies, it is specific to your agency. So just follow that agency specific guidance. It's going to have my contact information, and then we save and continue. Now, once I save and continue, you'll see that I have a confirmation message. Changes have been saved successfully. So that's exactly what we want, and we can go ahead and move forward. So our items, and this is what we're going to add our open market item. And we're going and put in some of the information that we need to. So description, we're going to say, what do we want to do? Let's do for Fender guitar amplifiers. Now, this description is just can be something that's general. If a lot of times for these small purchases that are under $10,000, if you can put all of the specific information in your description, you don't necessarily have to have a separate RFQ document, request for quote. Once again, rely on your agency policy for this because I believe that other agencies have different requirements. Some agencies, they say, no, all of our small purchases have a request for quote. Whereas if in the description here, if it's something that's very specific off the shelf that you can be very clear that the vendor knows exactly what you need, you don't necessarily have to have a separate attachment. You can just put it in here in the description. So we're going to have quantity, we do 4. Our unit cost, actually we're going to change this because we'll say, yeah, let's go ahead and do 4. It'll be, I don't know, we'll go 1,200. Then we have our unit of measure. Now our unit of measure, it defaults to each. Now you can use the drop down. So specifically for whatever you're purchasing, you have different options, per hour, per pound, per month, per ounce, you have a bunch of different options here. And if you ever need the appendix to see what all these drop downs are, you can immediately go to the website. So our CPOGS website within bid by. So it's on that same page where all our job aids are. Okay. So you go to bid by resources for state agencies. And you're going to see here, just above all of our job aids in the appendices is where we have the unit of measure appendix. So you can see what all those different ones are. But we're happy with each. Oh, I put $12,000. We don't need to do that. $1,200 a piece. Okay, then we get into our NIGP codes. So those NIGP codes, just as a reminder, all of our goods and services are categorized via NIGP code. So what you need to do is, as a vendor, when I go in as a vendor, I pick all the codes that I want to be notified for. So this is how we identify our items, how we identify our services, as well as how we're going to identify our vendors to receive the notification. So there's a couple different ways. If you know the NIGP code, you can click in here and just type it. If you don't know, you can use the drop down. You can kind of browse through our classes and then say, once I pick a class, I believe it's 580. Yep. Now I pick my class item. So once again, if I can type it in, or I can use the drop down. The other option is, if I want to, I can select the magnifying glass, and then I get a pop-up here that brings up, I can search by keyword. So let's say guitar, search. Now I have a couple different options here. So amplified instruments, guitars, and amplifiers. So that would be it for 580.03. I click save and exit. And now I have all my information in my items tab that I need. Now, if I'm going to do multiple items, I can do save and add new, and it's going to keep me right here. Now it's going to have a nice separate, my separate item. But since we're only doing the one, I'll click save and exit. It's going to bring me back to my items tab with my changes saved successfully. Okay, so moving on. Now vendors, this would be next. So, but if I'm following my job aid literally, which that's what we say. We say just follow it, follow through. It's going to actually, we're going to come back and add our vendors. And the reason is we want to complete our address, accounting, add any attachments that we need before we notify our vendors. So, and this is only, the only procurement method that we actually contact vendors at the requisition stage is a small purchase less than $10,000. Okay. So this is the only time that we're going to actually put in information in our vendors section here. So we're going to come back to that. Address. If you need to change, your ship to, bill to, it's easy. You go in and click the magnifying glass, and then you can go in, you can click find it. That's going to open up all the different addresses for your agency and say, hey, we want to send it to this location. Select it, and then we can save and continue. So this is only going to be appropriate for those agencies where you're shipping to a different address than you're billing to. So I click save and continue. Once again, I get that confirmation message, that green change saved successfully, and that's really important, and now I can move on. So we move to accounting. Now this is the first time that we see our red validation error. It's not going to allow me to submit this for approval. I can't move forward at all until my accounting is done. And what's really important to know about the accounting is, and we make a note on our job aids as well, is that the accounting function triggers the appropriate approval path. So in this case, since it's less than a certain threshold, it's going to route through a different way. So all your agencies are, some are set up very similarly, some are set up completely different. So the approval path for that agency is set up in a way that the agency has decided. So, perhaps for certain NIGP codes, for certain procurement types, perhaps, maybe the CFO wants to approve and see everything above a certain threshold, or they want to, the CFO wants to see every sole source. However the agency is set up, it's all done via this accounting. So how we do that is we can just follow our job aid. I select the magnifying glass. It's going to bring up a pop-up. I click find it to get all my options. Let's make that a little bigger. So these are all of our special procurement types. So you can see we have emergency, exempt, joint purchasing, not applicable, renewals, sole source, state use. Now, depending on how your agency is set up, the approval paths could be going through, or the approvals could be going through different people depending on what is selected here. Now, I will say, most of the time, you're going to be selecting not applicable. So, since this is a small purchase, you can just literally follow the job aid. It says select not applicable, and then we hit select. And now you're going to see that we have the not applicable account code is selected. And then we're going to do two things. We are going to save based on percentages, and then we immediately rebuild for all items. So what that's doing is the save based on percentages is just saying, hey, it's just saving that not applicable. And then when I rebuild for all items, what that does is it takes that whole not applicable special account code and applies it back to everything in our items tab. Okay, so now that error is gone. Now we know that when I submit for approval, it's going to go to the right person. Okay. The next tab is the routing tab. There's no approvals set up at this point. This is more for, I can look back later and see who approved when. Okay. Our attachments. So our attachments, we talked about that small purchase designation memo before. That would be a document that would need to be completed here, as well as potentially a request for quote. So how we do that is we click add file, choose file, and we can go in and select the document from our computer. Let's see, what do I have here? Documents. Add that in there. Okay, now you can put in the description. When you have a lot of documents for it's more for those larger, more complicated procurements where you have a lot of different documents, or potentially the name it's not clear enough. You can always put a description here that makes it real. We'll call that the RFQ. And then I click save and exit. Oh, I have special characters. Perfect example. Okay, so let me show that again. Save and exit. The file that I was trying to attach has special characters. So you can't have it in the title. You can't have these special characters there. I'm actually glad that kind of popped up. I haven't seen that error in a while. So that means I need to go back and rename my document so in order to attach. So what I'll do, I'll just go and get another one so you don't have to watch me do that. the job aid. Well, that one doesn't have it. Cancel. Let me start over. That's our RFQ. Not sure why I'm getting that error. I didn't think that one had a special. Hmm. That's really strange. I'm not sure why I'm getting that error because I'm not seeing any special character actually in the name of the title. Might have to circle back to that. That's interesting. So that would be a situation where, real life example, right? Um, I said you can't have a comma or a dash either. Did that have a comma in it? Thank you, by the way. I didn't realize that had a comma. It doesn't. Let me look something else. Let's try that one. There we go. So when I attach a document, you can see that I have the option to show vendor or not. And on each one of our job aids, we actually tell you, um, whether to show to vendor or not. Yeah, thanks for that, Kim. So for this case, this would be we talked about having this be the request for quote. We actually want to have that show to vendor. Now let's add another file. Just go and add the same one. See which one did I do. See, now I'm all worried about what I added. So for this one, let's call this would be the small purchase designation form. Now this is a document that we want to keep internal, right? It's just more for the procurement file, so the vendors don't need to see that. All I do is select don't show to vendor. There you go. So we have our documents that also any other agency specific documents. Let's see, I'm trying to think. There would be a lot of times there's a internal purchase request form. That would be one that could be added here. We'll call that purchase request form. That would be an example of a document that is just internal. We don't need to show that to the vendor. So now that we have all our attachments, now we can go back and add our vendors and notify our vendors, okay? So we go to vendors. Now we're going to publish informal bid on web. So what that does is it allows us to see pricing in real time, because normally for a small purchase below this $10,000 threshold, since it's not going to the bid, let's say, looking back a couple years ago before bid buy, you would have just emailed the vendors. So you would have been able to see that pricing in real time anyway. That's what this informal bid does. It allows you to see the pricing as it comes in. So we publish informal bid. We're going to look up and add our vendors. Actually, sorry. You know what? I need to follow my own job aid. Let's look up and add vendors first. It's kind of one of those things you get so used to doing it, and then when you don't do it the exactly right way, I should follow my own advice, right? So we bring up a pop-up, and what we're going to be searching for is that NIGP code. You can just type it in, 580, or you can use the drop-down at 03. And the other thing we're going to be searching for is our small business vendors. So this is going out just to our small business vendors. So as I scroll down, we see small business set aside, and we select yes. Okay, so that has to be highlighted, and then we're going to click find it. So a quick note about these two different find it versus find vendors for all commodity codes on the rec. You need to select find it, because if I select find it, it's going to use all the parameters that I have up here to search for. But if I select find vendors for all commodity codes on the rec, it's not going to take into account my small business set asides, okay? It's actually going to search for all vendors with that commodity code. And that's laid out on our job aid, but just make sure that you are selecting that. So we're going to click Find It. We have our small businesses here. We're going to select all, save and exit. And now we're going to have all of our lists of our vendors here. Okay. So now we will publish informal bid on web. We're going to select our bidder participation, right? So we have the option of unrestricted informal bid, all vendors can view and respond, or restricted informal bid, only selected vendors can view and respond. Now, we definitely want to keep this restricted because this is only going out to our small business vendors first. Okay. Our bid ending date, this is where we are going to put in, when our bids are due. Now, normally we would say our general guidance is 3 to 5 days, and this is on the job aid as well, to provide opportunity for the vendors to provide their quotes. So we normally give them 3 to 5 days. So if this was going out today, I would make it either Friday, maybe Monday, depending. A lot of times it depends on what it is too. But for our case, since we are going to be wanting to move this along, I'm going to select 9. Do 9:30. See what time is that? I'm going to try 30 seconds. We can do that. Okay, then I save and continue. Once I save, you can see that I have a new option down here called Notify Vendors. So I select Notify Vendors, send the notification to my 4 vendors here, send notification. I'll have an email that it's a preview of what the email is going to get, or what the vendor will get. I select notification. Okay, yes. Now these vendors have been, they just received an email. Okay, so at that point, let's go back to, kind of a real world example like I like to use is you're not going to sit here for the next 4 days on this screen, right? So we go back to my home screen. What you can see here, there's a couple different options. You can see most likely you're going to utilize this recent documents here. If it's not, you're going to go do other work, come back to BidBuy. If it's not in this top 5, you can always select the View More, and it's going to show everything here that you opened in the last last 30 days. So that's one option. The other option would be, just in your requisitions, right? So you're going to have requisitions in progress. You can always toggle over here between the right, View Mine, and View All. So View All is going to show everything in your agency. View Mine is just going to be the ones that you touched. So that's going to be a quick way to find it as well. Okay, so we're going to say that the time has come to go see if we have received any quotes. We are in that Vendors tab. Now, over here on the right-hand side, if they had submitted a quote, what they would do, you would see edit, view, or edit info. But for this point, we're going to say, nope, we didn't receive any. So what we need to do is we're going to do a small business set-aside waiver and go out to all businesses, okay? So following our job aids, on the very back page of that job aid, it's called resoliciting under $10,000 if the small business set-aside waiver has been approved. Okay, so under $10,000, the APO signs the small business set-aside waiver. And if it's over $10,000, the SPO has to sign it, and that would have been attached at the bid. But since we're under $10,000, we're still at that requisition stage, but we need to document that we went to the small businesses first. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to go to our summary tab, and we're going to clone this requisition. So it's going to bring over all our attachments. It's going to bring over all our information. We don't have to redo all the items. We don't have to do a bunch, but now it really needs to be a new requisition, okay? Because this is we need to document that it went to the small businesses first. So we're not going to select cancel requisition. We're going to select clone the requisition. Okay, so then we have our fiscal year. It's going to default to what the current year is, but there is an opportunity for you cloning a requisition from previous years, so that's why that drop down is there. We select save and continue. And now you can see that I have a cloned requisition hyperlink right here. So we select that hyperlink. And now we can complete some of the information that we need to. That over, there we go. So, general tab, we shouldn't have to change much there, right? Because we'd already completed all that information. Our items is already there. You shouldn't have to complete anything there. We will have the attachment, so we will need to put in the small business set aside waiver. So we would add file, choose file, add a document there. Say this is the small business set aside waiver. That's an internal document, right? So we don't need to show that to the vendor. So we uncheck that. So we're still showing the request for quote. That was this document here. Save and continue. And now we're going to go back to our vendors tab. And we're going to add more vendors because at first we just went out to our small businesses. Now, since we have our small business set aside waiver approved, we're going out to all businesses with that NIGP code. Okay. So we're still going to look up and add vendors. So we still follow that same exact process. So I'll still do my NIGP code 58003. But now I'm not going to worry about just grabbing the small businesses. I'm going to get everybody. So I'm going to search everybody that has that NIGP code. And look, we have a lot more vendors that we can choose from. Okay. Now, I will say there's a note on the job aid, but I want to just double check that at the requisition stage, if you have more than 25 vendors, you need to go in and this would say, say there were 50 vendors, it would say save in next page. So even if you select all, like it looks like it's getting all of them, you need to save and next page, and then go to the next page of vendors and click all, save and next page. Now, in this case, we don't have more than 25 vendors, but if you do have more than 25, you have to follow that process. So we save and exit. Right. Now we can follow through here. Look what we did last time, publish informal bid on web. Now our select our bidder participation. Now this is going to be unrestricted. Anybody can view it. We've already gone to small businesses. We want everybody to be able to view and respond. I will say one thing: we don't want to go in and delete our small businesses off of this list. We're just adding to it because the small businesses, they still get a chance to respond this time. It's just now they're competing with everybody. Okay, so we're not deleting anybody. We want to have more competition. Then we do our bid ending date the same way. You would go out 3 to 5 days, but just for our purposes here, let's go 9:46. Save and continue. Once I save, I have that option that pops up, says notify vendors. And now we're going to select all our vendors and actually send them the email. Send the notification to selected vendors. There's an example of that email that they're going to receive, so it's kind of good to see what they're going to see. Notification. And then now they've all been mailed. Okay? And now at this point, you can go in and you can fast forward 3 to 5 days. We can come in and see if we received any of our vendors. Now, vendors, most vendors, what we're seeing is they are getting used to submitting via the system, but they don't have to. So maybe they choose to send something in paper. Maybe they emailed you. Maybe they, if they didn't use the system and you have to put a quote in on their behalf, that's easy. You just go in and select create on that informal quote, and it brings up a little pop-up, and all I have to do is type in the price. So 1,200, let's say. Save and exit. Now you can see over here on the right-hand side, under that informal quote, view edit. That's what it would look like if they had submitted without you putting in on their behalf. But just so we see we have 2, let's go ahead and do another one. Maybe we received another email from this vendor. And they said 1,300. Okay. So now that we see we had received a few quotes, as we scroll down to the bottom, once that bid ending date. So right here it was 9/46. Once that bidding date ends, or it comes and passes, we have a new option that's called informal quote tabulation. This is where we're going to select the low cost vendor and then we'll submit for approval. So informal quote tabulation brings up a pop-up and it shows you in green and 2 asterisks who was the lowest cost. Okay, so we are going to select this vendor. Then we apply pricing. It says, are you sure you're going to apply the quantity and the pricing? Yes. Then you can close the window. And now, if you can see, move that chat box out of the way, under the recommended column, we have check next to our recommended vendor. So you're not technically awarding that vendor, you're just recommending so that when it goes through the approval paths, you are submitting to most likely your APO. This is the low cost, this is who we're going to award to. Okay, so then we go to the summary tab and submit for approval. There you go. So since we're in the train environment, we're not gonna have approval paths set up because we want to be able to move through these documents very quickly. Normally what you're going to see is you'll press continue because it will be whoever is next in your approval path, whether it's someone within your department or your APO. Okay. And then, we can automatically approve at this point. And then you'll see that the status moves from in progress to ready for purchasing. One little note too, on each one of these, if I select the little paper right next to that, it's called the document history, it brings up a little snapshot of when did it move through each one of the statuses. So it's a quick little snapshot. I think that's really helpful. Another option to be able to find when things were approved, you can click the routing tab. There's not going to be anything there for here because we don't have approval paths set up, but in production you would be able to see that. As well as in the summary tab, as you scroll all the way down, you would normally see who approved when on that summary tab. Okay, so once this has been approved, since we've already received all our quotes, we're not going to convert to bid because we already received our quotes. This is a small purchase less than $10,000. So this is one of those procurement methods we're going to convert straight to PO. Okay. Now I'm not going to walk through the entire PO process, mostly just because most people that are doing have department access roles that are doing small purchases less than $10,000 aren't actually processing the POs. So it's mostly a central procurement staff at your agency. All right, so fairly easy. It's kind of one of those things that it might look kind of complicated, but once you've done it a few times, I guarantee you it makes it a lot easier. And really, I can't say it enough. Walk through those job aids step by step because we've done a project over the last couple months to really dig in and make sure that those are clear and helpful to you. So you should be able to just walk through the process via the job aid each time. Also, just a reminder too that we have made changes. We're currently on version 20.3 for the small purchase under 10. So just double check what job aid you're using, and how you can do that is, I showed you that same page, but just to show you one more time where it is. The CPOGS website, we go down to bid by resources for state agencies. And you have that bid by training resources page, which has all of our job aids. So for instance, what I was walking through today, you select small purchase, subject, and then it pops up, brings down both of the small purchase ones. So the one we went through today was the small purchase under 10, version 20.3. And as we are publishing them, I'm putting the actual date that was on there. I think that makes it a little even more helpful to know these were updated on March 9th. And really, most of them, most of the job aids were updated for the upgrade into version 15. So now that we're in bid by version 15, you're going to see that a lot of these were published on March 9th because that's the date we went live with the upgrade. Okay. Looks like I missed a question. Can you zoom the name Zoom the name. If I'm sorry, that was 20 minutes ago. I might have missed that. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but please let me know. If you do have specific questions about that, I do have my website or my email is David. There we go. Is david.latrell@illinois.gov. So we can, circle back. We can do some more training specifically on this. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and end the call. Not seeing any other questions. Everybody have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Thank you.